The first time I met Freddie, I got to tell this at the time, so this is a crowd I think would appreciate it as well. First time I got to meet Freddie, he asked, what my area of expertise was, so of course I made something up. And then he asked where I went to school, and I told him Indiana University, and he said, well, I graduated from the University of Kentucky, and I teach at Purdue University, so I have 2 reasons to absolutely hate you. If you know Freddie, you know that's not true. That's probably the last thing he would say. He may think it, but he wouldn't say it. Our next speaker simply lives, breathes, and guides others on the most complicated aspects of the economic dynamics of agriculture. Freddie Barnard represented the keystone, cornerstone, and the heart of the Ag Econ department here on campus for over 3 decades. In addition to his professorial duties, Freddie trained scores of ag bankers through his continued dedication and commitment to the Indiana Bankers Association Ag Lending School. We at First Farmers have been fortunate enough to benefit from his vast knowledge and insight for a number of years as a member of our board of directors. Please help me in welcoming one person who better understands the ins and outs of ag finance better than anyone. Please help me in welcoming Freddie Barnard.
Hey, thanks, Tate. Hey, super to be here with you folks today. It's nice to have the opportunity to share some things with you. Usually I'm sitting in the audience out there, and you do not know how I appreciate it being here rather than old Roseburg, because I did not have to do the get up early in the morning to get over there this morning, so all I had to do was get over here. So I appreciate the opportunity to do that. We have a teachable moment. Is this got an echo? It seems like an echo. Teachable moment here in agriculture. We got several students at Bank Hard who are my students, and 2 or 3 years ago, and I said, hey, you have a perfect teachable moment. You're going to learn some lessons here in the next few years that you can carry through the rest of your career, and you did not make a single one of those loans. So you don't have to be accountable for them, but you learn the lessons of them, okay? Well, we got a teachable moment here in agriculture as well for producers. You know, most people don't like to talk a whole lot about finance during the good times, you know. We talk about it when things are down, okay? So we have a teachable moment, and that's what we're going to try to do today is share some things with you. We've got some information right at your own fingertips, some tools you can use to convert that into usable information, and we got an opportunity to spread your horizons, okay? What we're going to do, talk a little bit about how the lending environment has changed a little bit last few years, a little bit about financial reporting and credit analysis. That's what's going on in the country right now as we speak. A few key ratios. Now, I will give you the calculations of these things, but if you were in class, you'd have to do it, okay? But you have to do it here, okay? It's going to do it for you. I'm going to show you a spreadsheet that you can take and put your numbers in. It'll calculate the ratios for you, and it's just like magic, you know. Put the numbers in there, and it just does it for you. And then we're going to use that to do a little bit of analysis, changing some things in terms of operating practices, loan terms, and how effective is it? Make any difference? And we'll see what makes a difference and what doesn't. Then we'll finish up with a summary slide of 10 things that I think you have to try to do to get through this environment that we're in. It's different, okay? Great run from 06 to 13, you know. My dad passed away in 05. And if I had told my dad on his deathbed, we will sell a bushel of corn for $7.52, he would have said, what, in 05? You're nutty as a fruitcake. What you been out here drinking, son? You know, you're not even talking sense out here. But we did. We saw a time there that we often didn't think it was even possible out there from 06 to 13. Now, of course, livestock producers on that same period were doing what? Their feed costs were going up through the ceiling, and so they had to make some adjustments. Now, we're going to have to make some adjustments in terms of the grain side. The key word there is multiple years. 09's a down year, but it came back in 10, right? Now we got multiple years that we're dealing with. So you can't just count on next year being better, because now we got times that are going through several years, and so that means we have to make some adjustments there. During those high-income years, most of us had taken the farmer oath. My grandfather did, I did. I swear I will never pay $1 in taxes I don't have to pay. So help me, right? If I go bankruptcy, well, I'll go there, but I ain't paying any taxes, right? So in order to offset that thing, what did we do? We bought some capital, all right? Some irrigation, some grain, some tile, some $60,000 pickups. We won't go there, okay? We bought those things that helped us on our income tax. But the principal payment on some of that debt is what? It is still with us, right? You pay the principal on term debt out of net. I'll say that 2 or 3 times. So when the net's down, now that same bucket for proprietorship and a partnership comes family living and taxes. So when that net's down, there may not be enough money in the bucket to satisfy. So that creates the financial stress. So the payments are still there. Living expenses, I'm going to show you a slide here in a little bit on living expenses. During that 06 to 13 period, what do you think happened to living expenses? Think of any belt tightening going on during that time? Not a whole lot of belt tightening, a lot of loosening going on there. And I'm going to show you what Illinois data shows. And you can check Nebraska and some other places got the same finding there. Relatively low interest rates, and what have we just seen recently? These may be what? Short-lived, right? We're on the way up probably there. Real estate values, we're sort of in a stabilization period here. We were going down a little bit. Looks like we stabilized a little bit last year. We'll see going forward whether we're going up or down there. But we can't probably count on that to create equity for us in the next few years, right? Okay, it's a little bit difficult there for them to go up when your earnings are down. There's a picture of the net income calculations there for the sector. As you can see, we're down, we stay down. That's the problem that we didn't have at night. Living, you got a handout there. I know that these numbers are a little bit difficult to read when you're sitting back there, so that's the reason we put it on a sheet there. 2013, $89,000, okay? Now, that's a family 3 to 4, or 4 out there. 89,000, this is Illinois data, okay? People say, well, what all is in there? Well, you got it all listed out there, right, okay? You know what that number was there in 06? $66,000. So did we increase family living a little bit there from 06? Yeah, 66 up to 89, okay? We've backed off a little bit the last couple of years, you know, from 89 to 88, 900. I guess we didn't go out to dinner once or twice or, you know, or whatever, you know. Down to 82 here in 16 was the last one they had. What is even more enlightening is they array those things and they cut off for the low third and the high third. Well, the low third, 61,000. Okay, so a third of them less than that. The high third, 133,000. So that means a third of them are what? Higher than that, right? Do workshops across the country. They did a workshop with Farm Credit. I know I'm not supposed to say that here, but it was. They got problems, okay? I'll just put that. So I'm down in Shelbyville, and a guy there, it's a loan officer, says, you know, I got a guy to spend $1 million in family living. How can you do that? He said, I think you got on the wrong side of the market, but I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, how do you spend $1 million, you know? If I'm sitting there in my recliner watching a good UK, well, probably not this year, a good Purdue basketball game and got my glass of sweet tea there, I'm pretty well set. You know, I'm set for the night. You know, the only thing I got to worry about is that I'm sitting there and my wife walks in and says, well, I'll watch a game with you, and I'll fall asleep. You know, it's a little bit embarrassing when she does this kind of stuff and says, it's time to get up and go to bed, and you have to ask who won. You know, that is a little bit downer there. So how do you spell? I don't know. Somebody did, okay? Point is, it went up, okay, and it went substantially. The difficult thing is what? How hard is it to get it down? It is hard to get it down. It's easy going up, but it's hard coming back down, all right? So where are we in terms of record keeping? Now, this survey was done in 05. Former colleague Christine Wilson, she's out at Kansas State now, surveyed 72 of the farmers that come on campus in the summer. They're going to do it in the winter this time. But called our top farmer workshop, okay? And this are the people that are the movers and shakers and those kinds of. What kind of records you keep? Okay. Well, I don't think it's a whole lot different now, okay? Because during your good time, do we tend to keep more? Probably don't, okay? In fact, it may even be worse, okay, than it is now. What do they keep? Well, 78% of the respondent or the spouse keeps the records, 18% another family member, daughter, son, somebody else. So 96% of them are kept in-house, okay? So that's who you got to talk to, you know, if you're going to sit there and talk about records, you know. We don't have a records program like Illinois or Minnesota or Iowa or some of those folks there. So where are we starting? 99% of them said they keep them for tax purposes. There is one soul running around out there who's keeping it for analysis purposes. If I could find him or her, I would hug him, all right? There's one of them out there. Everybody else is keeping it for tax purposes, right? Okay? So that's where we got to start, is what do you got for tax purposes? That's nice little news. I appreciate the background stuff. 80% of them said they had prepared a balance sheet, okay? That is night and day from 1982 when I started here. I've spoken probably every community center and extension office and things from 82 to 87 out there. And you would sit there and talk about, where's your balance sheet? And people sit there and look at you and just say, think you're crazy or something. You know, you said something wrong out there. 80% said they do a balance sheet. That's good. 96% own a computer. That's huge, because it's not just for eBay, because 87% of them said they're doing it with their record, keeping their records on it. Why is that important? Why do I get excited about that? Because they got the numbers in electronic format. See? In 82, I don't know how many workshops I did out there, where we would do cash flows, monthly cash flows, with a pencil and paper and calculator. It is a wonder somebody didn't just shoot me out there, you know? Get out there and you make a mistake back in February, carry it all the way to October or whatever, you know? You've been there. I see some north-south out there. You've done that stuff, right? Today we got all these spreadsheets. Isn't that fantastic? You know, it's just only good. Just plug the numbers in there, right? And it does the math for you. It's like magic. Somebody waved a wand out there. So 87% of them keep it keep records in electronic format, but only 21% have an accrual-adjusted income statement. Now, what am I talking about when I talk about an accrual-adjusted income statement? It is accrual. Now, students think it's cruel when I'm doing in class, okay? Accrual. We're going to take what we've got, the cash, because most of us doing cash-based accounting for tax purposes, and adjust for the inventories, the receivables, the payables at the beginning of the year and the end of the year. And come up. We're trying to match revenue with expenses. Okay? So even though we got all this power out here with the computer, we don't use it a lot to do the accrual adjusted income statement. It's a much more accurate one, and I'll show you just why I say that here in just a second. What do I see? I teach credit school and stuff across the country. I see a lot of schedule Fs out there being used for income statements. You think that is an accurate portrayal of the income for that year? We intentionally mismatch revenue and expenses, right? For the purpose of doing what? Reducing taxes. I took an oath to that, right? For the purpose of reducing taxes. But does that match revenue and expenses for analysis purposes? No, it's off, okay? It's intentionally off, okay? We didn't want it to be off, okay? Few monthly and quarterly cash flows out there. Well, if there's ever time to do one, it's now, okay? Monthly and quarterly statement. When do you want to know if you're off budget? When it happens, right? I don't want to know at the end of the year. The cow's out of the barn then, right? I want to know when it's happening, but I don't see very much of that out there at all. Multiple years of operating expenses in one line. Can we have 3 years worth of operating expenses in one line? Last year's stuff, still got some grain on hand, right? Still got to clean the line up. Got this year's, and could I also be praying for next year? They're all mixed in there together, right? All mixed in there together, and it makes it confusing to try to figure out what's going on. Living expense. Oh, gosh, let's see this one. All right. I showed you the 89,000. I want you to remember that number, because we're going to come back to it in just a few minutes. I was teaching in Missouri Credit School, and I had a couple of boys in there from Arkansas. And they said, nobody in our part of the woods spends that kind of money for family living. I said, well, what do they spend? Well, I don't know, but they don't spend that. Well, if you don't know, how you know they don't spend that? right? They might be spending $250,000 for all you know, right? Particularly when they're writing the checks for the family living out of the business checking account. And who's feeding that? The operating line, right? No check and balance on that thing, okay? So I thought we had this dog whipped there in the 80s, because I talked about it certainly enough in the last 5 years, a separate personal and business checking account. Does that make sense? People say, you know, I can't have them track every stick of gum they chew out here, right? I don't care how many sticks of gum they chew out there. But if I've got that personal checking account and I know what we started with, how many draws went from business into the personal and what they had at the end, do I have a pretty good idea of what family living was? Yeah. I may not know what they spent on underwear, and I don't really care, okay? But I have an idea of whether it was 60, 70, 80, or 220, right? As to what went into that thing. But I don't find that, okay? I find quite a bit of right you through the same one. So how much difference is there between cash and the accrual-adjusted? I said that we needed to do an accrual-adjusted. All right, is this just an academic exercise where it doesn't make much difference or not? Well, I heard this question, I hear it repeatedly out there, particularly with bankers. Sometimes they don't want people to do something. You know, they're afraid to be a competitive disadvantage. They have people do this. We looked at 1,045 farms from the Illinois data set over their records program, and looked at cash versus the accrual-adjusted. Is there much difference in this? Or are we just making a mountain out of a molehill? So, assets are valued at market value. We're talking Schedule F on a cash basis versus accrual-adjusted. We went in and we calculated that. This is a relatively stable period, okay? This is from 02 to 06. If you take the difference between those two, the percentage difference there, you see anything that's under 50%? No, a single year that's below 50%. Did a study in Illinois that did that, and it was 70%. Okay? So is that close enough when it could be off 50, 60%? That's quite a bit of difference, right? Where do you pay principal on terms at? Net income. And it could be off 60%? Does that make you feel warm and fuzzy? Doesn't me, okay? Doesn't me. Well, I hear this all the time. People sit there and they say, well, what if we just average ours 3 years? That just doesn't take care of it, right? Just all averages out. So we averaged ours 3 years. Average out? Is there anything under there 50%? Had a lady at our advanced credit school come up to me, and it was almost like a kid not wanting to do homework. You know, anything you can get out of, not have to do it, you know. So, well, what if you went 5 years? Not 3, but 5 years. So we went 5 years. What do you think? 52%. Is that close? Enough? Had a guy in Indianapolis came up to me and said, what if you went 50 years? I ain't got no 50 years worth of data, but I know this. I don't know a banker on the face of the earth is going to wait 50 years for a payment, so who cares, right? Maybe in 50 years it all averages out. I don't know, but I don't care, right? Did he make it money this year? Look like he's going to make it next year because the principal on term gets paid out of what? Net. I got to have a good measure. We looked at firms that were changing. And to represent that, we looked at change in gross revenue. Less than 5, 5 to 10, more than greater than 10. As you look across those 3 columns of numbers, what do you see? The more the change, the bigger the difference. Because you got all these changes with the inventory, right? Okay, think about hogs, you know, put a new building, got all this population coming in there. So a lot of it's in inventory changes. Could be price changes, okay? But inventory is a big one there. So as you make bigger and bigger changes in the operation, the differences get bigger, okay? People sit there and they say, I don't think I can have all my borrowers do this. I'll get this from bankers. I talk to them quite a bit, Well, if you got somebody that's got $20,000 loan, they're making a payment out of all-farm income, I wouldn't worry about it. Same thing every year, right? But a commercial producer, should they at least know what they make in terms of money? Well, I would hope so, okay? So the bigger the change, the bigger the difference between cash and accrual. Then we looked at debt-to-asset levels, okay? Less than 20% debt, this is debt divided by your assets, and it's valued at market value. 20 to 40, greater than 40. As you look across the three columns of numbers, what do you see? The more highly leveraged the firm, the bigger the difference. So is it imperative for somebody that has quite a bit of debt to do accrual-adjusted income statement? Yeah, okay. My $20,000 utility tractor out here, it's paid off non-farm income. It's not going to make any difference, right? I ain't got no debt, okay? Here I got a lot, okay? The bigger the difference, okay? So there are other studies, and the numbers just are different, but they're in the same ballpark, okay? With Illinois data and other data across the country there. So there's no question about the difference out there. Remember, this was a pretty relative, easy, stable period of time. We didn't do 06 to 13, okay? That would have been, but let's look at that. Those are relatively stable. What happens when you got a period that's changing? And I think the best illustration of this is looking at Minnesota data. They're in 07 and 13. 07, we're going up with grain prices. Their cash income on that year was $66,000. Well, what was going on with inventories? More value, right? So their adjustment was 95 plus. So what was the true income earned in that period? 161. That's huge, right? So it could be because of volume or it could be because of price, okay? And here I'm trying to illustrate the price part. You just look at the volume, keep the price the same on each end of the year there and see what happened on the volume there. That's huge. And that's fun, right? That's fun. 13, what happened? 13, we had a lot of cash income, nearly 150. But what's going on with inventories that year? Prices are doing what? They're going down, okay? The adjustment's a negative 60. So what did they end up with? 90. What was the family living in 2013? I showed you on the previous chart. 89. How's that work? That new math won't even get that to work, right? New math, they barely had enough to do what? Live. So what does that leave for principal payment on term debt? Zero. As a result, financial stress, right? Now, we can use some depreciation lines to sort of offset some of that stuff in the short run. But see how it matches up? That doesn't work. That dog won't hunt, right? So you have to get this accurate measure of what's going on. Now, what do you need to do that? You need a beginning balance sheet at the beginning of the tax reporting period. And for 92%, it's a calendar year, and so it's 1231 statement, okay? So why does the bank want you to do 1231 statement? Because it's going to need it for this, right? You need an ending one, the end of the tax reporting period. So then you need one, 1231 at the end, right? And the tax return, both the Schedule F and the 4797 there to get your gains, okay? If I've got that, I can do an accrual-adjusted income statement. Now, is there anything on there that you wouldn't have? And the biggest snag is people say, well, I don't get statements at the end of the year. Well, that's just an adjustment in the timing as to when you're going to do it, okay? But I got the statement, got tax return. So do I have what I need? Yeah. So is there any requirement for additional record keeping? No, you already got it, right? Farmers already got it. So that's what you need. And we have a spreadsheet, and I'm going to show it to you here in just a second. And I'll prompt these guys in the back there that we'll go to it in just a second. That It's free. And if you can't get it to download, the previous slide had the link on the thing, okay? If you can't get that to work, you email me and I'll send it to you as an attachment, okay? Won't cost you a dime, all right? I've sent them all over the country, okay? People say, you know, I never had so many people could get something to download, you know? I think I'm about to conclude that they've just sat there and say, well, it's easier to just email him. He'll just send it to me there. So if that works for you, go for it, okay? So now, it's amazing how many won't work out there. So let's look at this first sheet. And I think I gave you the first 4 tabs on that thing in your handout. So you got it, got the information. You look at that first part. Schedule F, line 9. So you go to your Schedule F, you got line 9, you got a number there, you put it in there. How hard is that? Pretty straightforward, right? Just transfer those numbers right down there into the top part of that spreadsheet. Move on down to the next section there. They've blown this up. There's usually one for a page, but this is nice so we can see the numbers there. Beginning and ending balance sheet. If I got that at the beginning and end of the year, plug them in there, right? What do we got in terms of our numbers? Then we've got in there, then a sale, some capital, brought that in. Family living, okay? Family living for whatever it is for your operation out there. You know, I show that slide with 89,000. I have people say, well, they're skeptical of that. You know, I've been doing workshops for 36 years, some close to 50,000 people. And I've concluded that no farmer lives high on the hog. And also, we don't live high on the hog. And what I have concluded is they just all got different size hogs. Nobody lives high on it, but they all got different sizes out there. You know, some of them great big ones, some of them little bitty ones out here, but nobody lives high on the hog, okay? So whatever the family living is, you plug it in there, okay? Now, if it's intergeneration, you got several generations, you know, always gets me. We're going to bring son or daughter, daughter, whoever's going to come in here, you know. And they'll sit there and they'll say, well, you know, it don't cost them much to live, $20,000 or something like that. Well, you know, if family living consists of a pickup truck with a gun rack at the back and a can of Skoal, it probably doesn't cost much to live, right? But what happens to him? He finds this sweet little girl, and that can of Skoal doesn't do a thing for her, right? What does she want? House, car, just everything that city cousins got right now. I'm not anti to that, but it costs more than $20,000 out there when you go out there and get married. So you got 2 families coming out, living out there. Then we're going to have 2 family livings out here, right? And it's not 20 each, okay? I guarantee it. So you plug in the family living. Go ahead and move that thing down a little bit if you would. And lo and behold, what it does down at the bottom where it's white, it does the calculations for you. See, it'll just generate them for you. You just plug the numbers in there and it'll do the math. Isn't that great? I've been doing that. I'm going to plug numbers in here, you know. All right, banker said, well, I don't want to have to spend a whole lot of money for it. Well, it's free, okay. Well, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time. I can get that in 7 minutes, and I can't type. You know, I'm doing this stuff. You get somebody who can actually type, probably 3 or 4 minutes. If you really want to get in fast, go get some 7th grader who can do this kind of stuff. And they'll get that thing in there in 30 seconds, you know. You might want to check it when you get it in there, but they'll get it in there, all right? So you plug them all in there. I got 7 minutes in this thing, right? I already done my accrual-adjusted income. I know what it is. It's already done it for me, okay? Go to that second tab there. The nice thing here, right there, is it will calculate the ratios. How about that? I'm going to show you those ratios in a minute. You don't even have to calculate them. It'll just do it for you, right? That middle block there, if it's got a yellow shade, you got to put the numbers in. Okay, if it's white, it's doing the calculation. Those are benchmarks from records programs. Illinois, Iowa, Minnesota, Iowa State, Kansas State. Anyone's got a records program out there. I did several workshops out in Kansas in May. We used Kansas State data, okay? So they can match up with what they've got. I use Minnesota here in these things because they get their data out early. They will have 17 out in about April, okay? Illinois, I love their data. but they don't get it out very quick. It's just slow, and so I tend to gravitate to the other. So what you've got here is you've got all these ratios I'm going to show you in just a minute, and what the benchmark you're going to use, whether it's the middle, top fourth, or whatever, and it's going to automatically tell you where you're weak or strong. Now, students love it because you give them homework assignment. They already analyze this for them, right? Go to that third tab, and we're going to talk about a ratio called the coverage ratio. And what it will do is it's a comprehensive ratio that tells you about repayment. This one we're using as an example, it's 100% or 1, which means it can just meet the payments. Just meet the payments. So these white numbers are already brought to you from the first tab, all right? The yellow shaded one, that's something you might want to change, okay? Things that you've got in terms of your interest expense, or so you got principal payment on your term debt, you're going to split that out, how much you're going to use to replace capital, plug in whatever number you want to plug in there. And then it's going to calculate that coverage ratio for you, okay? And if you move it down just a little bit, let me show you. Another thing that a lot of people find attractive on this is if you want to know how much additional debt situation will serve, plug in the years and the interest rate, and it will take that and then tell you what additional debt will be served by that income. Now, I often have people come and talk to me and say, how much debt could we borrow? How much money could we borrow out here? And they want me to give them a debt-to-asset ratio is what they want me to give. 40%, 50%. Well, when I do that, what happens? When they go home, they're higher than that, and they take this adjuster. You know what that adjusts? Land values. If I can adjust the land value up there, I can get that debt-to-asset to look whatever I want it to look at, right? I sit there and I adjust. It's like magic. It's creating equity, right? I just go ahead and change that number there, and wow, gosh, look how much money worth, okay? The very thing is when it's going down, what happens? We adjust it the other way. I don't like doing that. I like looking at repayment capacity is what I look at. And so then I know whether or not I can service the thing or not, regardless of what the assets are. Do the fourth one down there, the change. The nice thing is if you want to change something, you plug yours in, look at it, then you sit there and say, what if we change this or that? Could you go up to the front worksheet and change a number? And then see what's going to happen on that coverage ratio? Yeah. Back here, you can change whatever you want to change there in terms of expenses. What would this be effective or not? And then down at the bottom, if you pull it down, it'll just calculate return on equity and all these good things, and it just does it for you. You just plug in what you think you want to change, okay? Click your thing, and it goes right to the bottom there, and it tells you what it does, what's effective, what's not. If it's not very effective, do I want to spend any time on it? Probably not. Okay? Probably not. Okay. Let's go back to our PowerPoint. Let's got a question on this thing. Like I say, that thing's free. If you've got your own, use your own, But if you don't have anything, this thing's free. You just email me and I'll send it to you there, and you can plug in your numbers however you want to work them. Okay? And if there's ever a time that it is needed, it's probably right now. Okay? Every time. For everything a time comes, well, this is the time, okay, for that right there. It's been around for several years there, but it's probably being used more now than any time. So there's the link down. When we do financial criteria, we're looking at a few ratios here and look at some differences. We usually split them up into 5 criteria. Profitability, that's pretty straightforward. What are we talking about when we talk about liquidity? And it's not water, huh? Thought I heard it. Cash flow. Can I meet my obligations now? Okay, well, I got to save now. That is different from solvency, which is can I meet all my obligations if I sell everything? Okay, liquidity is one thing, solvency is another thing. The one that's most enlightening is efficiency, and we'll show you a few numbers here from the top 20% and the low 20%. It is stark in terms of differences between those two groups. And then repayment capacity, and that's that coverage ratio that we talked about just a minute ago, and I'll show you that. All right, there are several data sources you could go to. And I'll give you the links. And they're just right out there. Illinois, just go out there and click on the thing. There are financial analysis characteristics. FinBen up in Minnesota. Iowa State has a data source. So you could just go to those, click on that thing. It's beautiful for me. Because in '82, So I talk about operating profit margin or this or that, and people say, well, where should it be? Well, higher is better than lower. That's about all I can tell them. We know what the top 25% did. We know what the bottom did, okay? And so it's not a guessing game anymore, and higher is better than lower. We got the numbers out there, and so you can see it. So those are some links. You want them? They're there. Follow them up. Let's look at some financial profitability measures. Return on assets. I'm not going to go through the calculation. I'll put them in here for a reference. But if you go back, you say, how does that calculate? You can go back and see. Okay, we're going to look more at the comparative numbers. Return on assets, and the sister to it is return on equity. Now, the thing I want you to carry away from here today is I always want my return on equity to be higher than my return on assets. Why is that the case? Because I am profitably using borrowed funds. My return to borrowed funds exceeds my cost of capital. So I want ROE higher than ROA. The third one that we often use is profit margin. This is the same numerator as return on assets, but it's per dollar of gross. That is enlightening, because for every dollar of gross that's going through this thing, are we making any money or not? Why is that enlightening? Because if it's negative, do I want to expand? I'm going to give it away faster, right? You think it's ever been done? Oh, yeah. It's been done a lot, okay? So I got to first sort out, is it margin or is it volume? And if it's margin, increasing doesn't fix it, right? It just makes it worse out there. So those three are standard out here. So let's look at some Minnesota data for 16, okay? Like I said, the 17 stuff will come out in April. I got some pretty good years in here, 12 and 13. I got some not so good years in here on 15 and 16. This is all farm. You can sort the thing by hogs, beef, dairy, grain, whatever you want to do it, okay? Now, is this true that ROE for the top 20%, this is the top 20%, is always higher than ROA for the top 20%? Even in bad years, ROE is higher than ROA for that top 20%, right? Why? Because they are profitably using borrowed funds. On the low 20%, is their ROE lower than their ROA? Every single year. Doesn't make a difference whether it's a good year or a bad year. These are all lower than ROA. That's the reason I'm telling you. You want ROE higher. I'm profitably using borrowed funds, okay? Data supports it, right? Every year. Look through there. Good years, not so good years. That operating profit margin, how many cents are we returning for every dollar of gross that runs through the business? These people in 2012, the high 20% in profitability, 36 cents. Out of every dollar that's running through that operation, they are netting 36 cents. Do they want to get bigger? You betcha, right? But look down here in 16, the low 20% is losing 14 cents for every dollar of gross that's going through there. Do they want to get bigger? No. Okay. So I got to sort that out. Is it margin? Is it volume? Okay. Before I start going down the path of what we're going to do, what's the issue? Okay. Notice that even in the good years, 2012, 2013, the low 20% were still negative. Should there have been all kinds of red flags that those folks are probably going to have issues if the prices drop? They got issues when the prices are up there, right? It's not going to magically change if the prices drop, right? When there are signs out there of people just waving, here, look at me. There's an issue here, okay? Because this thing's negative, even in a good year. Of course, it just gets worse when you're sitting there and prices go down like we've experienced. So, if you do your numbers in that little spreadsheet and it calculates operating profit margin, Can you see whether you're in the top, the bottom, or the middle? Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those deals you say, well, you know, everybody's like me. Well, no, they're not. Look at how big the difference there is here. It's huge. Well, it's going to get bigger. Okay, let me tell you that. Here we go down through. Liquidity and solvency. A couple of liquidity ratios out here. This one's been around, well, I don't know if it went all the way back to Methuselah or not, but it's pretty close, okay? Current ratio, all right? Current assets divided by current liabilities, okay? We generally want to use a rule of thumb of 2 to 1 there because we want margin. We want some margin in there they can use for bad times. The new kid on the block is working capital, which is current assets minus current liabilities, and what percentage of your gross do you have? The more, the better, okay? The more that you've got in terms of on hand, the better in terms of being able to deal with issues. Solvency, there are 3. I'll tell you why there's 3 here. Debt to asset, most of us are familiar with that. Equity to asset, that is simply equity divided by assets. You add those 2 together, you get 100% or 1, okay? And then what many bankers use, debt to equity. I chaired the ratio committees for the Farm Financial Standards when we went and established all these ratios and stuff. In our committee, we said, well, we only need 1 solvency measure. You know, they're all sort of telling the same thing out here, you know. And everybody on that committee wanted debt to asset except Texas. You don't mess with Texas, right? They weren't going to give, okay? They wanted equity to asset. I said, well, I'll tell you what. I'll go to the full task force, and I'll just make our little spiel out here and let them vote on it. We'll come out of there with 1 of them, all right? Everybody agree? So I go to St. Louis. I did my little spiel there. Had 2, wanted 1. And one of the bankers in the back of the room said, well, where is the debt to equity ratio? That's all we use. I thought we could get rid of that one, you know, when we just do 1 of them. So I went to St. Louis with 2, wanted 1, and walked out of there with 3 of them, okay? You don't want me to negotiate anything for you out here. I had a new appreciation for what Congress goes through right now with all this give and take after I went through that little exercise. I thought, holy mackerel. How did that happen? I walked out here with more than I even wanted out there. But that's the 3. They're all telling us a little bit, the same thing, a little bit different. It's current ratio. We say, what, 2 to 1? Profitability is high 20%. They got 2 to 1? Yeah. All of them do. Okay? Here, if you got profitability issues, it is going to eat into liquidity. Just guarantee it. Okay? Now, these were still over. Now, that is the average for that low 20%. So there's some people under that. If it's less than 1, that means what? They do not have enough liquid funds to meet their obligations, right? Okay. Now, this one is not used as much there, but look, in 12, these people just have 20%, 50% of their gross income they had in liquid assets. They need much borrowed money? Not much, okay? Look at us in 16, this low profitability group. They got a dime, 11 cents. Not much liquidity. You know, you got profitability issues, it's going to show up sooner or later in liquidity. I can guarantee it. It's going to filter down through there, okay? So you know where the top and the bottom do. If you look there at your debt to asset ratio, and I'll just talk about that one, and because the other 2 telling us the same thing, about 35%. And that's about where we come at, and no matter what database you look at, that we got about 35%, 51, okay? They're at 51. They've always been about 40, okay, in terms of debt to asset. So that goes right along with that ROA calculation I talked about, you know. You got down 20% in profitability. You're going to have operating losses. It's going to manifest itself like that in debt, okay? They tie together. They just all tie together out. Let's look at some efficiency ones. And these there's some stark contrast. Asset turnover is one where we look at volume. The higher, the better, okay? Gross revenue divided by your average assets, okay? So using grain, we're talking about 20, 30%. Hogs is about 45. It changes by enterprise out there. But the higher, the better. The more volume we're running through with the asset base. Revenue per labor. Historically, we have netted about 20% of our gross. Okay? People always ask me, how much you have to be full-time? And I used to say about $500,000, the gross. Now, people don't like to hear that. They want to hear head, and they want to hear acres. Now, why did I say $500,000? If we net 20% of that, what are we going to have? $100,000, right? What's it going to cost to live? $800, all right? I got something to pay principal on, right? And it's got taxes. So I said that's about the minimum. Right now, I'm saying about 750 because the margin's narrowed. Now, if you only net 10 to get that 100,000, what do you got to have? $1 million. Gross. See how it works on this thing? You know, how much you got to have? Well, how much we netting? Because we're going to have something to live on, and something to pay principal and term debt, something to pay taxes. It all comes out of the same bucket. Okay. So that measure, and then the next four work together. Operating expenses, excluding interest and depreciation, divided by gross. Depreciation, interest, and net. I've had people tell me, well, farmers can't understand ratios. You add those four together, you get $1. And if you don't have enough in the net, what do you got to do to one of the other three? Work on it. It's got to decrease, right? I've never had anybody couldn't understand it. You look down through that, you get $1. Okay? And if we don't get enough at the bottom, then I got to do something up above. Well, let's look. Asset turnover. Do the high profit people run more volume through this thing? Absolutely. Okay? That's one of the key points. Operating expenses. This is what I want to talk to you about here for just a second. Look at this. The difference there is 28 cents between the low 20% and the high 20%. People say, we're all the same. Yeah, are you kidding me? 27%, or 27 cents on the dollar here, okay? Between the high profit and the low profit. How does 99.9 work when all of that's going to operating expenses? How much does that leave for depreciation, interest, and something to put in my pocket? Not anything, right? And it's all going where? Operating expenses. See, I can narrow this thing right down there, and then they got to sort down through the operating expenses and what throws you into that category there. But even in the good times, in the 12 and 13, see, we had a 99. This average for the low profit group, you know. Like I say, problems ahead, you know, we've got problems ahead. We get right here, then we really experience them. Look at the depreciation. Early on, these had more depreciation. We've about evened out now because most everything's depreciated. You know, there's not very many people bought a whole lot for the last few years, okay? So we're at about 7 cents on the dollar. People will talk to me about interest. Look at the difference in the interest here between the high profit group and the low profit group. Is there much difference there? 2.2 cents. So yeah, they just cut my interest rate. Will that do much? Even the top end is only 2.2 cents less than the lower. Okay? So all that stuff manifests itself here. Okay? Now just think about this. If the low profit group right here, had the operating expenses for the high profit group, would that get them in the black? I said it's 28 cents, right? Would that get them in the black? Yeah. Well, what if they had the interest for the high profit group? If they're here and they have the interest for the high profit group, would that get them in the black? Not even close. It's not even close. So this time around, we could have adjusted interest rates in the 80s when they were 16, 17%, and it made a big difference. But this time around, we start too low. So there's not much difference. When you're starting with 4 or 5, you can cut the thing in half, and I'm going to show you in a minute. I'm going to cut it in half. And it doesn't make much difference. See? It's operating expenses. Operating expenses. So the coverage ratio, it's a big calculation. It brings in depreciation, brings in the family living. This one is one many creditors use because they sit there and it's a comprehensive measure. If it's over 1, she'll be able to make the term debt payments. Another one is interest and principal payments on term debt as a percentage of gross, whether it's 10%, 20%, or whatever. If you look at the data there's some fives back up here in 2012. But even today, the top 20% have over 2. They got profit. Where do you make the principal payment on term debt? It's net, right? So they're going to have a high coverage. What does this tell me? Can you do it? See, that feeds right into liquidity, feeds right into repayment capacity. That profitability is key. It is key. It trickles down. Talk about trickle down. This thing trickles down all the way through, okay? So, the bottom, even in the good year, 2012, they were 1. Is that an indication there's problems ahead? Yeah, even in the good years, there were issues. I'm going to show you some scenarios that will change some things here and how effective is a change. And I'm using that little spreadsheet I just showed you, all right? I got one little case study, same case, but it's just different leverage. One's 30% debt to asset, relatively low. 3.5% on the operating, 5 on the term. Same farm, more debt. 46% debt to asset, same interest rate. Now, this is usually where somebody says, well, I'm not sure I agree with those interest rates. Well, then that's when I say, then put your numbers in this, and you put whatever interest rate you want to put in there, right? So it's a nice little segue when somebody says me something like that, okay? So we're going to see how effective it is. What if I change something? Does it make any difference? If it doesn't make any difference, I don't want to spend any time on it, right? Everybody's short on time. So what I'm doing, and here's what I did. I won't go through and belabor all the points. I used this case in 2013 to do presentations on stress testing that we had a sensitive repayment capacity out there, and we better be paying attention to what's going on. 13, 14, I did those kinds of things. Now I do analysis. See, the same thing, you can do both. Okay? Well, the revenue we had in 13 dropped at 18%. That gives me a coverage ratio of 1 for the 30%. They're underwater for the 46. See, all I did was drop revenue to 18%. Just dropped it down 18%. Kept the cost the same. Does that sound familiar? Yeah, probably should, all right? Variable cost the same. Cut the taxes because got less income. I put an $80,000 family living in there. And then the term payments, we started out with level principal payments, and then we're going to go to a more installment level total payment there. So I won't belabor these. That's just what I did when I did the run. You see what I did. Okay? If you want to repeat it, then you can go back and take that spreadsheet and plug those numbers in there and then run it and see what it is to start with. How can what are things we can influence? One is to generate more revenue. And people say, why can't you do it? Marketing, opportunity for better marketing, maybe another business, whatever, cost control, non-farm income. If I have non-farm income, does that offset family living withdrawal from the operation? Yes, it does. Okay, yes, it does. Well, how effective is that? All right, let's see what it does. Cost control, variable cost, the fixed cost, the big ones there is the cash rents. Of course, no news to most people here in this room. And then what if we reduce the family living? Make a difference? Well, what I did was I went up to that front sheet, or that spreadsheet, and I made these changes. And these are the changes I made. I increased revenue 10%. Make any difference? Well, we'll see. Non-farm income, what I did was I put enough non-farm income to offset the family living. So if your family living is 50, then I'd offset it with 50. I did 80. So they would say, well, I get an $80,000 job, I'll go do that, right? But whatever the family living is, I just offset it, okay? Operating expenses, 10%. Not cutting them in half, not cutting 25, 10%. Then I did a combination. Increased revenue, 5, decreased expenses, 5. 5%. Is there 5% difference if somebody could improve on marketing? I didn't say double it. 5%. 5%. Okay. And then I cut the living withdrawals by 15%. What did we do? All right, here's why it worked. See, I just plugged those numbers in there, and then I just clicked down to that third tab, and it's already calculated for me. How much time I got in there? 30 seconds? I put 7 minutes in there to get stuff in there, a couple of minutes to put my benchmark stuff, And then I just do my changes. A lot of time? I got about 10 minutes in there, I think. Commercial time, right? No. All right, so how effective was it? When we started in 13, see, I was over 3 with that 30% one. I'm over 2 with the 46. And I cut it down, I cut the revenue down, so I'm on 1 in 16 for the 30%, 77 at 46. Did it make a difference? Well, did increase in revenue 10% make a difference? I went from 1 to 2.11. It doubled it. Is that worth pursuing? You betcha. I want to focus on that, right? It still didn't get me, it got me over, it didn't give me 1.5. I usually look for 1.5 there, but it got me close on the 46% one. See, it's not as effective there with the higher leverage. You got less maneuver room here. How about off-farm income? Well, I went from 1 to 1.78 just by not taking anything up for family living. 1.26. Okay. How about operating expenses? I nearly got to 2 by cutting the operating expenses 10%. Not 20 or 30 or 50, 10%. I went 195, I went 137. The combination, that did me so. The living, it didn't get to 46% up. Why do you think it is what's going on there? The size and scale of many commercial producers, even though the family living may sound like it's a big number, it's small compared to those total operating expenses, right? Okay. It used to not be the case in the 80s, okay, when we sat there. But it's the case today that it just didn't make that much difference. It did not get above 1 for the 46. Okay. So could you do it in combination with something else? Sure, you could do that. You know, you can do all kinds of combinations. So do those things look effective? Yeah. The revenue and the expense. I told you that operating expense thing is huge, right? And we see the effectiveness if I change something, okay? Well, we could change the liability side, okay? We could re-amortize the debt. I increased the loan terms to 30 years. I did a total payment, which is the smallest amount of principal I can do the first year. Interest is when I do this and do it on a equal total payment, not an equal annual payment. Well, did it make any difference? Well, here's what I did. I changed the terms, and I won't belabor all the details there, but you can see where I re-amortized and the numbers that I plugged in there to see the effectiveness of just changing the debt terms. What do you see? Fix it? I had to re-amortize both of the machinery and the real estate to get it up to 2.23. 1.23 here, okay, from 1. I barely got over 1. I'm 103. Changing the loan terms make a much difference on that? Not nearly as much difference as the other stuff did, okay? Interest only. I got a 114 here for the 46%. It got it over 1, but it didn't do 2 and 1.5 and anything like close to any of that, okay? So adjusting loan terms, does it make much difference in the environment that we're in? Didn't do much, okay? The bigger difference was making the changes in the operational decisions, the revenue and the expenses. The interest didn't do much good. In fact, people say, well, I'll just cut the interest rate. Well, I cut it in half. I went from 5 to 2.5. Now, I don't know anybody going to do that. But just to see what it does, we did it, okay? And I have to remind students of this. You know, if the thing won't work with whole numbers, there's no need to go to 4 decimal points, okay? Well, if it won't work for 2.5, it's not going to work for 25 basis points, right? So I cut it in half to see just dramatically what the difference is on this thing. So here you can see my points here. These are the numbers that we plugged in there. What do you see? Help a little bit, but did it do much? Did it do anything that was close to those operating expenses, those operating decisions? We start too low, see? We start too low. You know, if you're starting at 16, I cut it in half, that's a big number, okay? When you start at 4 and you cut it in half, you don't do much, okay? So you can see when I cut the rate and I change the terms on everything, we got some movement down here when we did both of it, but not much up here. Not much at all. And I cut the rate in half, 2.5 versus 5. So what you can do after you do those little runs there, and if I got a whole lot of time in this thing so far, not a whole lot. Started with 7, got a couple of minutes there for the tab 2, and then I just did whatever I want to do in terms of changing terms, changing interest rates, and just plug my numbers in there. What's the most effective? Well, the first line is our base. The most effective is increasing revenue. Okay? Better marketing is a big one. Okay? The combination one, and these are still at 5% interest rate, see? This is still 5%. 2.3, 1.4, that's effective. This is effective here. This is effective here. It is not till I get down to the last 4 that we bring in long terms. All the top is involving what? Operational changes. Okay? Operational changes. The terms just didn't do much for me out here. So we just array them. I quit putting them on the thing when one of them went below 0. I went below 1, okay? When it went below 1, I quit putting them. So that's the ones that got both scenarios above. Okay? Now, can you do the same thing? Yeah. Take that spreadsheet that I showed you a minute ago, plug your numbers in there, and then go to that front tab and just change stuff. What happens if I do this? What happens if I do that? Does it make any difference? If it doesn't make any difference, probably move on to the next one, right? If it goes from 1 to 2, we probably want to dig into that, okay? So it helps me narrow things down and have some control over what I change and what I don't change, and I get an immediate feedback as to what the effectiveness is. So there's no need to spend a half a day doing a cash flow for something that's not going to make any difference. Not going to make any difference, don't put any detail in it, okay? If it's going to make a difference, that's where I want to focus my attention. All right, 10 things here. This will wrap us up. And I'm supposed to go to 11, right? So I'm at 10 till, so we're in good shape. Don't abandon credit standards. Now, I wouldn't expect any lender in this environment to abandon credit standards, right? Because now's when we need the credit standards. Profitability. Accrual-adjusted in this period of time. Large operations. Because we're talking big dollars. Highly leveraged. Remember that slide I showed you, that the more highly leveraged, the bigger the difference between the cash and the accrual adjusted. Highly leveraged. Those going through some type of transition. Every one of those needs to do accrual adjusted, right? If you got no change over the last 20 years, I wouldn't worry about it, okay? You ain't dead, okay? But if we fit into those categories, do we need to know whether we made any money or not? Yeah. It's paramount. I showed you on the other ratios how it just filters through everything in an operation. Wealth effect. You heard the wealth effect? What that is? It means you're making capital purchases based on wealth rather than repayment capacity. I had a guy in northern Indiana was doing a workshop there, and he got up in front of his neighbors. I don't think I'd do this in front of my neighbors. Got up in front of his neighbors and said, and I think this 2 or 3 years ago, it's going to happen. Some people are not going to be able to make payments, and I'm going to be here ready to buy the real estate when it's foreclosed. I'm sure he made lots of friends that day. But wealth effect, he's making his decision based on his wealth, right? You want to make it based on repayment capacity, okay? And I showed you that when we did our little spreadsheet out there. So repayment, not wealth. Is it out there alive and well in today's environment? Yes, it is. I talked to several people. Yeah, I'm just waiting for somebody to land to come up. Then I went back. Well, can you make a payment? It's based on wealth. Well, I got all this real estate that went up in value. Well, what goes up can do what? Can go down. Okay. I want repayment capacity. That's what I want. Repayment versus solvency. I was talking to you earlier about that, and that's where I focus, repayment capacity. Interest rate. We still have an opportunity to lock in some pretty decent rates, right? Long term. Isn't it amazing? It's absolutely amazing. I told my son 2 or 3 years ago, you better be buying a house, you're going to miss these lower rates, and I'll be doggone. They prove me wrong every time, right? But there's still attractive rates out there. What happened there in the 80s, So people got caught with some high rates locked in, and it just sunk them, right? Can we lock in the reverse now? Yeah, and I think most people have. I'm sure there's some soul out there that hadn't, but if you haven't, you probably need to think about it. Crop production risk. I don't know how you operate without crop insurance. There are about 7% who do, okay, but they self-insure. But I don't know how you take that risk in the environment we're in. Market. The windows are narrow, right? Windows are narrow, okay? And people get caught up in the emotion on this thing. Do you need a disciplined marketing plan in this environment? Absolutely, okay? Corn, December corn got about $4 there in early June. Only stayed a few days, okay? So I called my broker. I said, should we be doing something on this? And he said, no, it's going to go to 4.25. Gosh. Next day, went down, right? There in August, I'm coming back from teaching. I was coming from Missouri on that when I was coming back from Tennessee in August. He got up around 4 again. And I called him. I said, we are not missing this. I'm not missing it twice, you know? So we did something. Is the $5 in the realm of possibility right now unless we have something disastrous across the world? What can make some money and what can't, okay? And you don't have much time. I tell some lenders, you know, some of the best operating expenses may be to get a marketing consultant. That may be the best dollars you can spend out here. Disciplined marketing plan. Liquidity. What is the best response to uncertainty? Liquidity. Why did firms keep $2 to $3 trillion worth of funds in liquid assets the last 7, 8 years? With the uncertainty about the economy. And with the economy ticking up, what are they starting to do? Invest in capital, right? Less uncertainty, I don't need as much liquidity. So if I get some liquidity, I want to keep some liquidity until we get through this thing, right? Then I got options. I don't have any liquidity, then I got fewer and fewer options to deal with. Guarantees, that's one of those deals there that may be requested in this environment. It's just a fact of life, and accept it. Tools. In 82, I got here in January 82. Next 5 years, I spent out most of the time in the state. And I heard 2 things repeatedly. One, you guys should have told us this was going to happen. Well, I had the perfect response because I wasn't there. I said, well, I wasn't there before 82. I couldn't tell you it was going to happen, you know, because I am here now, okay? And I've been from 13, been talking about that. The second thing they told me was you guys didn't have enough tools to help us get through this. We got tools galore out there. Illinois, Iowa State, Kansas State, Minnesota, you go to whatever land grant you want to go to, Purdue, we got tools, and many of them free. Free. What I find is people don't use the tools. They're out there. Use the tools, okay? So you can do stress testing, you can do analysis, you can do all these things out here. And like I said, with these nice little spreadsheets, all you can do is plug numbers in there. It's going to do the math for you. That's all you got to do. You know, sometimes it's a challenge to get the numbers, but plug the numbers in, and then it's going to do the math for you. So thanks so much for your attendance and your attention there. I hope we gave you something to think about it when you go home out there. And thanks so much. God bless you, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Tate?